I wanted to do a super quick intro / disclaimer with this one, and just say that I think when it comes to games like Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, especially for me, it's very hard to find things I don't like or criticisms for the games. I would consider both of them to be near perfect, but nothing is actually perfect, really, I guess. So I tried to look at this with as little rose-colored glasses as I possibly could. So you're going to hear some things that might be nitpicky, might come down more to taste, and also might err on the side of criticizing precedent over the game. I wanted to address that ahead of time before we even intro the video, because I think it's important to be transparent and sort of let you know that there's things on this list that they made the list because I couldn't find anything else. I just thought it was unfair to not include City and Asylum in both the positive and the negative side of this series. So I'm interested to see what you think. I hope I don't really, make anybody too mad about this video. If you do get too mad, I think you're taking it a little too seriously, even more seriously than I am. But I'm the one spending a 2-minute intro here justifying a 20-minute video. So who's the real winner? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I look forward to reading your feedback. Okay, so we are now approaching dangerous waters, I think, in terms of videos. The point of this series, if you come across it out of context, which some people have and refuse to check the context, is that we are looking at 5 different things that each Batman Arkham game did very well, and 5 that it maybe did not do so well. And we are now on Arkham City, so this is pretty much everyone's favorite.
That's what you say here.
Yeah. This is pretty much everyone's favorite Arkham game. At least a majority of people, I think this is their favorite. So these things, some of them are about the game, some of them are about game design choices, and they're things that didn't resonate super well with us because we think they could have been done better. The first one, Nate, you're here, by the way. So hello again.
Hi, I'm excited to talk about Arkham City. I love this game.
Yeah, I do too. So keep that in mind. The first one that we have actually is one I think everyone can get behind, pre-order bonuses. The pre-order bonuses for this game were pretty egregious. This kind of started a pattern, and that's going to be a repeating thing throughout this video. You'll see is a lot of the negatives, they're not the worst they are in the series, they just sort of start a pattern from here on out. Pre-order bonuses were one of those things. So just looking at the United States alone, and this isn't even every single place, these are just the ones I could find off the top of the internet. Amazon.com, they had a $10 promotional credit, an exclusive Batman Arkham City comic book. So this comic was exclusive to this pre-order at the time, which was a little annoying if you're trying to actually get tie-ins to story. At GameStop, there was the Joker's Carnival Challenge map, which they called 4 hours of gameplay. I don't think it really is.
2.
Yeah, it isn't really unless you just play it repeatedly over and over again, but okay. And a digital copy of Batman Gotham Knight. Also, if you were a Power Up Rewards member, you got the Batman animated series suit at the time. So this is something you're going to see too through these pre-orders. Like, so much of the content was fragmented at launch, and some of it's cosmetic, some of it's gameplay, but it was still annoying. Best Buy, which is where I remember I bought the game, they had the exclusive Robin character, and they also had some playable challenge maps for him, and then he was playable also in the rest of the challenge maps in the game. So that was locked behind that pre-order, at least at first. Then there was other ones like Newegg, Walmart, some of those were a little less intrusive. But then at the time, this was like right after Batman Arkham City came out, they were also having a little sponsorship sort of tie-in with NOS energy drinks, if any of you remember that. I think they're still around. I don't really drink energy drinks anymore. But in America, they had the Batman Beyond suit that you could only at the time get by buying NOS energy drinks and redeeming a code on them.
Yeah, it just felt like it was too much.
Yes.
Like, it was like, yeah, all this stuff is cool, but you look at it, it's like, okay, there's like, 7 different places you can pre-order the game from?
Just in America.
Just in the United States.
There are different things in Europe, too, which some of them were pre-order bonuses in Europe and not here, and then some of them were. Like, I remember, I don't know if this one is from Europe or the US, but I think it was in Europe at first. If you got the Green Lantern movie, you would get the code for the Sinestro Corps suit. But If you didn't, you wouldn't get that for a while. This would all become purchasable later, but still, like at launch, this was a pretty bad way to start, a bad foot to start out on for people.
Yeah, I just remember when you got this game. I remember me and you were like jumping through hoops, doing like hours of research online to figure out the best way to pre-order this game. And then we also like went out and bought like NOS. We bought like all this stuff just to get all these like other suits. And it felt like a lot.
Yeah, and I think that was obviously the point for them, and it worked from a marketing standpoint. But looking back at the game, it was a problem, and it did start a pattern, especially one that I think was exacerbated in Night, where right away from the first trailer, you already could pre-order to get Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
Like, they just went all in on it. This set a bad precedent. Rocksteady kind of went in on this, and I think it was something that, because the market sadly rewarded, us included, it came back.
Yeah, we got trapped into it.
The second thing we actually have is the Riddler. This is something you brought up to me, but I completely agree with.
Yeah, I thought the Riddler was done very poorly in this game, both from his challenge and trophy side of it, and also just his character. First of all, I think everyone in the world can agree with this. There was way too many Riddler trophies throughout the map, like way too many. There's probably like 300 too much trophies and riddles.
Yeah, because there were 440 if you include Catwoman along with the riddles themselves, I believe. There might be slightly over 440, but I thought that was the number.
Yeah.
And then what was that in Arkham Asylum?
About 240 in Asylum.
So it's like it's almost doubled. It's 200 more.
And most of them, so there's a lot of trophies in the game that took about 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get one trophy, because you had to like figure out this challenge to go with it.
Well, that's just because you're bad.
Yeah, you're right. I'm a bad gamer.
That's my favorite response to any criticism for a game. I like thing, I did thing faster, therefore you are bad.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, sure, but like, not the point. The
Right.
point is it's obnoxious.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how great you are. We know you're great.
You're just a bad gamer.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I don't
there
know.
was way too many Riddler trophies and challenges. And then the Riddler himself as a character was kind of done poorly because they didn't really advance his character
At
At all.
No, there's nothing new about him. If you remember back to Arkham Asylum, he is the exact same thing, except now he's here, but you don't really see him much at all.
The only thing they added was now he has hostages.
Yeah. That's
Wow.
really it. And I mean, at least that is something. Like
Yeah.
that is a little like a change that I thought was good was the hostages,
Yeah.
I think.
They were kind of fun.
But that's it. Other than that, it was just a repeat of Asylum, and let's make it more obnoxious and intrusive in the gameplay experience.
Yeah, where you have to spend like hundreds of hours finding these Riddler trophies if you want to platinum the game.
Yeah, if you're not a completionist, this one is a lot less annoying for you.
Yeah.
But even as someone who just wanted to see the Edward Nygma character done differently, like I think we both like the Riddler,
Yeah.
it was a little disappointing that it was built up like, oh, finally, Riddler's in this game. He's going to be much more of a threat. And he wasn't. He wasn't really a threat at all in any way.
He's like, hey, find my trophies. It's like, oh, this again?
Yeah, and it never goes away. In Origins, then it comes back to the data packs, which are just the Riddler trophies reskinned.
Yep.
Then in Night, it comes back to the Riddler trophies again, which someone pointed out to me, Night actually has less Riddler trophies than this game, which one is insane. But two, it didn't even feel like it because I was so sick of them by the time I got to that game, mostly because of this one.
Yeah.
That, to me, it felt like there was 1,000 of them in Night.
It overdid it.
Yeah.
Way overdid it.
They overdid it in the second entry and like soured people on them for the rest of the series. A lot of people, not just us. So the third thing we have is something that we want to preface again by saying we like this, but there are some issues with it, we think, in terms of its execution. And that's actually the map itself. Now, in Arkham Asylum, the map is very, very well thought out. It feels like a real medical facility that was lived in and used by both patients and psychiatrists and doctors. And it feels alive, but dead at the same time somehow. Like, it's not a lively place in terms of, like, happy-go-lucky, the asylum. But, like, it's very believable, and everything ties in, even to the fact that Joker addresses you over the PA system, which has its own personality in terms of, you know, like when it plays a Joker message. Everything had personality in Asylum.
Yeah, the makers meticulously went through the whole map. and it felt like every piece mattered.
Yeah, every piece, every building, everything. The problem with Arkham City's map is less about Arkham City, but it still is a little bit about it. And that's that this, again, started to set a precedent of bigger means better. Now, what we know in games, actually, and I think people really learned this from Assassin's Creed, as Assassin's Creed got bigger and bigger, was bigger does not mean better. It does not matter how big Assassin's Creed Unity was. It did not make that map interesting. And that's a little bit of a problem that the Arkham games have had in terms of, like, we need to make this one bigger, therefore add more buildings, even though half of them won't matter.
Yeah.
It's just a problem with scope, because the map itself is still very good. But because you go bigger in scope that way, it starts to feel a little less alive. It starts to feel a little more like parts of it don't matter. Like, there weren't many parts in Arkham Asylum where you'd be like, that corner over there doesn't matter at all. But there are a lot in Arkham City that feel that way.
There was like over half the map didn't really matter. It was just another building.
Yeah, it was another building you flew over to get to your next place. And that's the problem, is it's sort of an impossible criticism to address with a game that big, because not every piece of your set design can matter. That's not the point. The point is to say that you go from one where it feels like every piece matters to one where it feels like a lot don't, just so that you can be bigger in terms of scale. That's a bit of a problem. I think they addressed it somewhat by sort of scattering Easter eggs throughout the world that really did help. Like from things like Maxie Zeus's nightclub, to references to different minor Batman, the animated series characters that
like
were actually
Crime
in
Alley.
this. Yeah, Crime Alley felt like really... It's not alive, but it felt significant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of significant locations in it. You just have to pass by a lot that aren't to get there. You also had an issue with the restricted area of the map that annoyed you in gameplay.
Yeah, it felt... So if you can think of the map, it's like a circle. There was like that restricted area kind of on like the bottom of it, going up about
Bottom of
halfway
the middle.
through.
Yeah, it's where Wonder Tower is in the middle, if you're remembering that.
Yeah, and part of the problem I had with it was... it kind of felt like part of the story. The missions kind of had you flip-flop around on the map a lot. And the only way to get from one side of the map to the other was to literally fly all the way around this restricted area.
Or you could find your way sort of through the subway tunnels.
Yeah, but that was kind of annoying.
It was kind of annoying to go through, you're right.
And I guess
that is a problem that's sort of gone in every other game after this, I think. They did address that. I don't know if they knew that was a problem, or they just thought it wasn't fluid map design in terms of traversal.
Yeah, they made it more easily accessible to get to places.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was parts in the story where it's like you're over in the far left of the map at like the museum with Penguin.
Yeah.
And then it was like the next mission you're at GCPD, which you have to fly, if you can kind of picture the map, you have to fly all the way around that restricted area. And then it's like the next part's over in, I don't know, like...
Where Joker is at the steel mill, yeah.
So it's, you're just flying all over, and you're constantly having to go around that restricted area. And I kind of felt like that was a little bit of a problem.
And the thing is, the map is still small enough that I think it's easy enough, but there's portions of it that feel annoying. Like, oh great, I have to go all the way back over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an issue with any huge game. It's not an issue I had as much with Asylum, because as you progressed through that world in Asylum, because everything was so meticulously set up, you'd have enemy encounters even on backtracking.
Right.
That made a lot of sense and felt interesting, at least to me. Whereas you don't have that in City, because most of those you can just avoid. Because you can take alternate paths to get where you're going. So there's no way for Rocksteady to have set up, like, how do we get them an interesting encounter on their way to the steel mill? Right. Unless it was like, all the guards guarding the steel mill at the one point in the story. They can do that, but if it's passing from from one side of the map to the other, and you can just take a C to go around instead of a line, they can't compensate for that. A lot of these criticisms, some of this comes down to taste, and some of it comes down to how do you do the impossible task of making an entire city and pleasing everybody in every aspect of it. You don't. So the next thing we actually have is story inclusion of some villains. I think villains made the list of positive things that I made with T, because they do feel like the villains they're supposed to be. I think they are interesting, but you pointed out to me that a lot of them don't tie into the main story, really.
Yeah, like Two-Face, Penguin, Poison Ivy. Now, Two-Face and Poison Ivy were really just there just to tie into the Catwoman story.
For the most part, yeah.
And she was DLC in the base game.
Yeah. And most people have played Game of the Year since then, so I think that's hard for people to remember as well.
Right. And the Penguin story, I felt like most of his story was just like, oh, Penguin trapped random police guards in his museum.
Or freeze.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, run over there to go free these guards. Okay.
Yeah, and when we were talking about this, something I think we both kind of touched on is it's not a huge deal, but I would say a big amount of villains in this game felt like they were there not to tie into the story, but to make you take longer to get to the next part of the story that does tie into the main story.
Yeah.
So like really the story of this game, if you're looking at it in terms of narrative as far as like what matters, it's mainly Freeze matters for a purpose he serves. Then Raish matters, Hugo Strange matters, and Joker matters. It's not that nobody else matters at all. It's just those are the key players.
Yeah.
And because of that, it feels more like anytime other people show up other than in a side mission, you're like, you're just here to stop me from getting back to Mr. Freeze, aren't you? Or you're just here to stop me from getting back to Joker. Instead of, you're here to enhance the narrative of the game.
And it kind of felt like they put these characters, these villains in there just to put the villains in there.
Yeah.
And to make you be really happy about the Penguin being in the game or something.
It's a little more fan service and a little less substance. Yeah. I agree with that. And that's not a criticism of the story. It's certain people that show up in it. The final thing we have actually is another precedent that was set that I think was a problem even in this game, but more of a problem in terms of the precedent that would go on after this. That's the DLC. So the DLC of this game is not terrible. Really, no one talks about it being bad, which is weird to me because everybody talks about Knight's DLC sucking. Like, oh, I didn't like how short these missions were. Yeah, totally get it. That's valid. I didn't like the Batmobile racetracks. Totally get it. That's valid. A lot of people don't bring up that there's not really anything in this DLC enhancing this story or world at all. There is the whole Harley Quinn's Revenge, which I think is fun, but it's like...
It wasn't very long.
It's like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So... It's really quick. I think actually I beat it in like less than an hour. Like if you're just going through it not doing the balloons or anything, it's not long at all.
No.
So that didn't really add much to it. It's just sort of an epilogue. And then on top of that, you pointed out with challenge maps and characters.
Yeah, it felt like most of the DLC that they added in was just challenge maps. So they added in characters like Nightwing, Robin. That's cool.
Even Catwoman.
But it's like awesome. You can only play them in challenge maps though. Well, Robin you could play in the Harley Quinn's Revenge, but so I just kind of felt like the DLC characters could have been utilized more, and it seemed like they were just pushing challenge maps more and more. Like it was like, oh, we released this new DLC, but it's a challenge map. I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, and the thing is, it wasn't even a time where those challenge maps were coming out on their own, which is weird. They were tied to those characters. So you would think like, oh, they matter to the character, but they don't really. It's the same issue a lot of people had in Night with Black Mask being tied to someone like Jason Todd that he had almost no connection to. It's like, why does this really matter? It's cool.
Yeah.
It's cool as fan service, but as a narrative or as anything more than that, it doesn't really have anything. And then... in terms of gameplay, those challenge maps started becoming more and more restrictive, especially the stealth, like the Predator ones. As far as like, there were restrictive ones in Asylum. I found the majority of those to just be the extreme variants.
Yeah.
And not even all of them were bad.
No, like they were kind of fun.
Yeah, but in this, it seemed like most of the challenge maps in terms of Predator were very restrictive.
There was one path that you had to do, like stuff like kill 3 enemies with this one.
No, Batman doesn't kill.
Sorry. Neutralize 3 enemies with this one explosive wall. It's like, okay, there's only one way that you can get this.
Yeah, you have to go in, drop in behind, do this, and this, and like put the explosives up, then go back and wait until a specific time.
Yeah.
And it led to a lot of people just like going on YouTube and being like, how do you get 3 Riddler marks in this one?
Right.
And yeah, it sort of eliminated freedom of gameplay, which I think no matter what you feel about each individual Arkham game, that is one of the things they do best, is like allowing different ways to tackle situations, giving you different gadgets. Do you want to throw in a smoke pellet, drop in, and just annihilate everyone with combat? Do you want to pick them off one at a time? Do you want to throw a remote control batarang at that guy over there, knock him down, throw a normal batarang at the guy on the edge, and then take them down on the ground? It's the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
But with these challenge maps, it started to be less and less that, and they just kept coming back in the series after this. Like, Origins and Night both did the same thing. And I think that in the case of Origins, it's actually a little excusable to me because WB Games Montreal was looking at what did Rocksteady do so good and how do we capture that? But Rocksteady should have known a little better. Like, they should have known what made their game so good. It was not the challenge map. No, not at all. In fact, I think they annoyed more people, and more people were just not interested in doing them than were.
Well, especially because they added a bunch of trophies for them.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the DLC, this goes back to the DLC, the trophies for, like, Nightwing, because he was only in challenge maps, it was like, complete all the challenge maps with the Nightwing.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, do I really want to do that?
Not really. It's just not really worth your time for a lot of people.
Especially because it doesn't matter to get like the platinum or
on
like
PlayStation.
That.
Yeah, and if you are someone who enjoys the challenge maps, I urge you to think about it from the standpoint that it was not for everybody at all, and most of them were just reused locations from the game that were better encounters in the game.
Yeah.
As you progress through the story. So it's really just pulling out a chunk of the game, forcing you to play it in a very specific way, making it worse, and then saying have fun. For a lot of people, that's not fun.
No.
So, I don't know. That's kind of where we're coming from with that. But those are the 5 things that we have with Arkham City that we didn't absolutely love. There was plenty more that we did. Obviously, we could make a top 50 things Arkham City did well.
Yeah, this was actually kind of hard for us to come up with some of these.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is we didn't want to bring up anything where we felt like we were digging for it, like, oh man, how do we find a thing that we didn't like? But this is a game where I don't know if I could make a second video of 5 other things Arkham City did wrong. I could come up with maybe another 1 or 2, maybe, if I like really tried, but it's a really good game.
Yeah, it's great.
And it really revolutionized superhero video games in a positive way, I think. So take these criticisms, is it with a grain of salt or worth a grain of salt? I don't know.
I think it's with.
Okay, we'll take it with a grain of salt because we're worth a grain of salt. So we appreciate you sticking around. Did you agree with any of the criticisms? Are we big dumbos for thinking any of these things? Or what were your criticisms and likes of this game? Let us know what you're thinking. Links, as always, are in the description below. Hey, have an awesome day. Stay shway.
You're awesome.